there someone in your life who just kind of brings out the worst in you? Do you find yourself doing things, saying things, even thinking and feeling things that you never thought you would do, think, feel, or say? Well, if so, you're not alone. You might be dealing with someone who's toxic, maybe even a narcissist. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today at queenbeing.com. Several behaviors that we might pick up as the result of being in a relationship with a toxic person, plus why narcissists tend to bring out the worst in the people around them. So let's get started. Closed captioning provided by Athena Moberg and CPTSDFoundation.org. I'm Angie Atkinson, and this is Toxic Relationship Rehab, where I help you discover, understand, and overcome toxic relationships in your life. So if you want to take back your life, embrace your power, and become the best possible version of yourself, hit that subscribe button, stick with me, and let's get going. If you've ever been involved with a narcissist, chances are that you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say self-protective behavior. And in this case, I'm not talking about the narcissist protecting him or herself. I'm talking about you and me protecting ourselves. When you get out of a relationship with a narcissist, very often you find yourself seriously disliking yourself. We really struggle with self-esteem and the related issues, and that's pretty normal. Part of that, of course, is because, well, the narcissist kind of makes it their mission to tear you down emotionally and otherwise, so that you don't feel like you can leave, so that you don't feel like you have any better options out there. They figure if they keep you properly insecure, you'll stick around forever and be the good supply that you are and put up with their BS along the way. Well, in some cases, we develop these behaviors that are meant to be protective. They are behaviors that are meant to protect ourselves, but we end up actually causing more trouble for ourselves in a way. For example, one client told me a story of how she and her now ex were in a big argument, and as a result of the argument, this client of mine ended up causing a car accident and finding herself in a really bad position financially. Normally, she wouldn't have driven this way. Normally, she wouldn't have behaved the way that she did that night. But after so much verbal abuse, verbal trickery, manipulation, gaslighting, she just kind of lost it, and she jumped in her car and she drove kind of crazily, way outside her normal nature, and ended up causing a terrible car accident. Dealing with a narcissist is exhausting mentally, physically, and otherwise. And one of the things that happens is we tend to develop self-protective behaviors in response to some of the things that narcissists do to manipulate us. For example, if we find that the narcissist feels annoyed or that we get in trouble every time we have friends over, what do you think we do? We stop having friends over. It becomes almost our job while we're in those relationships to sort of keep the peace in the house. And we get to this point where we stop allowing ourselves to care what we want or what we need, and we start to focus on what the narcissist wants and needs. But at the same time, due to this manipulation and this gaslighting that the narcissist does, we very often find ourselves feeling fearful, jealous, insecure, etc. This causes us to do things like push people away in order to avoid drama with the narcissist. Maybe we're pushing away our family members, maybe we're pushing away our friends, maybe the narcissist flirts with our friend in order to force us to push them away. And we think, I have to get that person out of my life because that person might be competition for me. But in reality, the narcissist just wants to push away anyone who might support you in standing up against them. And then it gets darker than that. There are some narcissists who cause extreme jealousy in their partners. They do this in subtle ways. They start focusing on how, your best friend has great hair, or, the lady next door has a really nice body, or the guy down the street makes more money than you, or whatever. They look for things to compliment or call out about other people, and then you look at yourself and go, well, I'm not good enough. And they encourage that, of course. Well, where does this leave you? It leaves you feeling insanely jealous, insanely insecure, incredibly alone, and always scared, always being afraid of loss. Feeling like at any given moment, your narcissist might realize that you're not good enough, and they might just go ahead and move on with the person with the great body or the one who makes more money or whatever it is. This might be a result of them flirting, or it could even be a result of them cheating. In the cases where you know that they've cheated, sometimes you become even more obsessed with being exactly what they want. I know personally, I went through a phase where I tried to figure out exactly what it was that my now ex-husband wanted from me. And it turned out, after much surveying and polling of him, I learned that he was into women who were nothing like me. And so then I wondered, well, if that's the case, why are you even with me? It was irrelevant. It didn't matter. He could have been into women like me and probably would have been if he was with a woman who wasn't like me. Do you understand what I mean? And this leads you to this whole other thing. And I see this a lot in women and men who are in relationships with narcissists and toxic people who make them feel not good enough. And they become obsessed with being the perfect person. I did it. I became obsessed with trying to become exactly what it was that I thought my ex-husband wanted. In many cases, this leads to a really, really negative place to be. You start hating other people that you might see as competition or that you might perceive as better than yourself in some way. Maybe you think they're more attractive, or maybe you think they're smarter, or they have more money or a better job, or whatever it is. You start to sort of hate those people. You feel really threatened by them, and your behavior kind of shows it. At least your internal thinking shows it. And if you're being honest with yourself, maybe your behavior shows it too. This is a place that no one ever wants to be. It's miserable to feel this way. Another thing that you can kind of pick up from narcissists as a self-protective behavior is you might appear to lack empathy to people around you. And part of the reason for that is because when you become so incredibly exhausted by the narcissist's emotional needs and demands and everything else, well, you don't really have anything left for other people. You don't have anything left to listen to your sister talk about her dog getting sick, or your grandma talk about how she feels since your grandpa passed away, or your best friend talk about the struggles in her own relationship. You don't have any energy for it. You can barely get up out of the bed as it is sometimes when you're in the middle of that toxic cocktail of a relationship. What it all comes down to is that your behavior changes. You do things that are out of character for yourself. You become something or someone who you don't really even like. And you don't even realize it in the moment because you're just trying to protect what is yours. You're trying to protect your relationship or your heart or yourself. In reality, it's not those people you perceive as better than you in some way who are the problem, and it's really not even you who is the problem. It's the fact that you might have been stuck in a toxic relationship. Does that make sense to you? The fact is that narcissists are known to bring out the worst in their significant others, their children, and other people in their lives. What ends up happening is that with the constant poking and prodding and manipulation and verbal abuse and everything else, like I said, you just kind of explode. You kind of lose it. It kind of brings you to a point where eventually many people kind of rage back against the narcissist. What does this mean? Where does this leave you? Well, we've talked before about narcissistic fleas. I'm just going to share with you a quick definition of that. Take a look. Sometimes when you are a non-personality disordered person who has been involved with a narcissist or another type of personality disordered person, you kind of start to imitate or emulate some of their behaviors. This is normal and natural because we all pick up habits from people we live with or spend a lot of time with. Well, this is what we call getting fleas. Sometimes it's because we've been exposed to a situation for a long time and we just kind of are looking for ways to escape from it. And sometimes we don't know how else to live, how to exist, how to demonstrate our anger, our frustration, or whatever. Let me explain exactly how this kind of comes up in our lives. How do we kind of find ourselves in that place? Let's say you were raised by deaf parents, right? So as a child of a deaf parent, you never really have to be quiet. You could drop stuff on the floor, you could practice your instrument late at night, you could sing out loud at 3 o'clock in the morning if you wanted to, you could turn your stereo all the way up. Your parents didn't care, they didn't hear a thing, right? Well, now let's say that you went off to college, your roommate wasn't deaf. So you are slamming your drawers shut at midnight, or you're playing your instrument at midnight or 2 in the morning, you're blasting your stereo while they're trying to study. They're probably going to get pretty offended by that and not like you very much as a roommate. But you're not going to even think about how loud you're being, because up until this point in your life, the people you lived with didn't really have a problem with you being loud. They couldn't hear you. So if somebody paid really close attention to what you were doing and they understood what it looked like when someone was hard of hearing or even partially deaf, they might think you were deaf or had hearing loss because of the fact that you didn't seem to be aware of how much noise you were making, right? The thing is that you could hear, but because you were raised by deaf parents who couldn't hear you, you were never made to be aware of that noise. Fleas are just like that when it comes to dealing with a narcissist. Those are sort of like deaf fleas that you picked up, right?
So what's the connection exactly?
When you live with a narcissist, you must do things the way they do things. Everything has to be their way. You have to follow the rules. There are no questioning the rules. There are no changing the rules unless the narcissist does the changing. You're not allowed to say what you think or feel. You're not allowed to have an opinion on really anything unless it suits the narcissist. If you do have an opinion, you better make sure it matches up with the narcissist's opinion. You're not allowed to express what you want or need. You're not allowed to criticize anyone. You must accept the blame for every single thing that goes wrong in the world. Basically, you don't matter. You're a nobody. You're just their source of supply. You come last, if at all. What happens when you have narcissistic fleas? Well, one of two things. Either you were raised like this and you carry this into your new relationship and you continue in the role of victim, or you were raised like this and you think this is how life is. So for me, for example, one of the things that happened to me was that when I first got into a relationship after I left home, I thought I was supposed to run the show. I thought that's how it went. I thought the woman runs the show, the man does what the woman says, and everybody's happy. It didn't work that way.
What it all comes down to is that it's really not possible for you to live with a narcissist or spend any significant amount of time with them on a regular basis without absorbing some of that toxic energy, whether you do so directly or indirectly. It's normal for people who go through narcissistic abuse to feel angry, to feel betrayed, to feel shorted in life. It's normal for us to feel negative, to become toxic. It's normal for us to act irresponsible or recklessly or outside of ourselves when we've gotten to the end of our rope with a narcissist. You know how they say you are the sum total of the 5 people you spend the most time with? Well, it all kind of adds up here. If you spend too much time with a toxic person, you may become toxic yourself. This doesn't mean you are toxic. It simply means that you might develop toxic behaviors, whether they are external or internal. This could be a simple negative self-talk thing you have going on in your head, or it could be more serious, like some of those examples I shared earlier. You're probably not going to become a full-fledged narcissist, don't get me wrong, but you really might start to kind of show qualities that aren't you. Toxic things, toxic behaviors. I think we've all probably been there up to a point. Let's just say that you are a recovering alcoholic and you're in a relationship with a narcissist. Now, you might find yourself sort of sneaking around and having drinks again when the narcissist drives you to the edge of sanity the way they're so prone to doing. That's because you're sort of clinging to any little bit of comfort you can during this toxic relationship. Does alcohol comfort you? Maybe not, but maybe it takes away the pain for a minute. You might make really bad life choices as a result of just wanting the pain to stop. It's a dangerous cycle to get yourself into. You might find yourself feeling depressed or angry, and the narcissist will see this and, of course, poke at it as quickly as possible. I think the narcissist actually wants to bring out the worst in you on purpose. Sometimes, and tell me if this sounds familiar to you, I remember seeing my narcissist kind of smirk at me when I did finally lose it and start screaming like a crazy person. And it was almost like they liked it, like I had been broken and it amused them. Just this little small smile at the corner of the lips and the eyes kind of getting a little bigger and acting almost like he was amused. Does any of that sound familiar to you? Why do you think a narcissist would want to bring out the worst in you? Well, maybe it's for a couple of reasons. Maybe they really do love drama, or maybe they want to discard you and they think that if they make you feel crazy and get to screaming loud enough that maybe they can run a good smear campaign against you. And in this day and age, narcissists all over the world have been known to record these rages that come from their victims and to use them against the victim. I can't tell you how many people have experienced that, and I bet someone watching this video might be able to relate to this feeling. If so, let me know in the comments below. So how is it that narcissists are able to do this? Why do they bring out the worst in us? Well, we've kind of talked about some of that, but let's dig into the psychology a little more, shall we? The first thing to remember is that not always, but in many cases, narcissists became narcissists because of some traumatic childhood experience. You might have also had traumatic experiences in childhood that led you to become codependent. And this might be part of the reason that you stick around with the narcissist, because you think, we've both been through this, we both can work together to heal. Well, this isn't going to work as well with the narcissist. Whether it was emotional neglect or direct abuse, narcissists learned how to stop caring how people felt. They lack empathy. And as always, they act from that perspective of not having empathy, not caring how anyone feels. This makes it really easy for them to manipulate you without remorse. And then they, of course, sort of pay it forward, their negativity, their miserable experiences, by gaslighting you, by constantly manipulating you, by causing you psychological, emotional, and even in some cases physical trauma. They make you doubt your sanity. They make you doubt who you are. And of course, there's the intermittent reinforcement factor, that when we first met them in the idealization phase, the love bombing phase, the narcissist may have been perfect or seemed perfect. They may have been exactly what we were looking for, we thought. And they may have held us up on a pedestal and told us we were the most amazing thing. And we believed them, maybe because we needed to. Maybe because we grew up with people who told us we were no good. And then when someone did come along and say, hey, you're amazing, we were like, yes, please, because we were so thirsty for validation of ourselves. At some point, we found ourselves walking on eggshells and wondering, what did I do wrong? And it may have happened very quickly, but it was so subtle that we just didn't really notice what was happening. And before we knew it, we were spending a lot of time trying to figure out, like I mentioned earlier, how to be the perfect person for the narcissist, or how we can change our behavior so that the person doesn't get angry at us and mad at us all the time. We start to notice the relationship has changed. We worry about how we are the cause of it. In fact, when we try to fix the problem and the narcissist very certainly tells us that it's not them, it's us, that we are the problem, we believe them and we continue to try to change ourselves. Of course, you can only pretend to be something you're not for so long, and you can only change yourself so much. Since we know the narcissist won't do any changing, we're willing to almost bend over backwards to just fix everything and get back to how it used to be. In reality, how it used to be is only going to come back temporarily, if at all, because narcissists run in cycles, in single relationships that sometimes will go on for decades, and in many overlapping relationships, depending on the narcissist. What it all comes down to is that for all of the manipulation and controlling and gaslighting and drama the narcissist brings into your life, and as someone who is usually willing to grow and adapt with the person they love, you're more than willing to give it a shot. You just don't know at the time that that person has no intention of ever accepting you for who you are. This is just a game they play. The best thing you can do is to recognize those red flags, recognize the manipulation for what it is, and accept the fact that this person is not going to become someone they're not. This person is not going to change. So narcissists are likely to, for example, cause drama when there's no need for drama. Let's just say everything's going along peachy keen and peaceful and everything's fine, and before you know it, the other shoe drops and everything's terrible. You might start living in fear of that other shoe if you're not careful. Of course, when you're nice to a narcissist and they get bored, they might just start pushing all your buttons just to get you to kind of react to them and cause drama. As I mentioned before, they do that thing where they kind of smirk at you in that moment, and they're kind of amused with themselves for actually getting you to rage against them. Of course, once you lose it, you start going after them and you get aggressive and start screaming and yelling like a crazy person. Well, what do? They act like a victim. They act like, poor me. I can't believe you're calling me names. I can't believe you're saying these horrible things to me. How dare you treat me this way? In reality, they're the ones who caused you to act that way, and you're outside of your normal self. And they know that, and they're kind of proud of themselves for doing that to you. They talk about how you're such a bully and they're just a poor, defenseless, innocent victim. This, of course, leads you to question yourself and doubt yourself and beg them to forgive you for the horrible things that you said, or the way that you screamed at them, or the overreaction that you had. Of course, unless you actually recognize that this was a result of their crazy-making behavior, well, you're going to be stuck in that cycle for a long time, and you really are going to start to think you're crazy. It's another one of those cycles. You find yourself being antagonized by a narcissist. You stay calm, you stay calm, you stay calm, and then finally you just lose it. You snap at him, you yell at him or scream at him. Then you feel guilty about it. You apologize, you beg for forgiveness. You swear you're going to do better. You start tolerating things that you would not normally tolerate. You let your boundaries be pushed. Then you feel guilty about it. Then you get mad when you realize what you've been doing, and, well, the cycle goes on and on. It's exhausting, and it's known to cause adrenal fatigue. So basically what it comes down to is that if you're too calm and quiet, they're mad. They cause drama for you. If you are kind and sweet to them, they're mad. They cause drama for you. They'll do whatever they can to cause you to scream and yell like a crazy person. And then they do everything they can to make you guilty for being so mean and horrible to them. Of course, if you have any trouble with them and anything they're doing, they will avoid or pretend it's not true or blatantly deny it. They'll run away. They'll disengage. They'll call you crazy. They'll say you take things too seriously. We could go on and on here. This is a ridiculous cycle that they do to us. When you're ready to get out of that toxic relationship and really start your life again, whether you're getting there or you're there now is the time for you to really start evaluating yourself and everything that you thought was true and everything that you believed was true about your life and yourself. Now is the time to start evaluating what it is that you really want, who it is that you really want to be, and to start figuring out what parts of yourself are really yourself and what parts of you are just reactionary to narcissists and their toxic behavior. What self-protective behaviors have you developed that might be toxic? This brings me to the question of the day. The question of the day is, have you ever developed or recognized in yourself a toxic behavior, a toxic self-protective behavior that you picked up that you're not proud of? Maybe one that you'd like to let go of or you already have let go of? Share your thoughts, share your ideas, share your experiences in the comment section below, and let's talk about it. I'm going to share a playlist for you right there, and on that playlist you are going to find videos that will help you learn how to spot red flags of toxic people and learn how to increase your own peace and your own self-confidence so that you can take your life to the next level. Take a look at it when you get a minute. Now, before I go, I want to make sure to give a shout out to my amazing channel members, those people who choose to support me through the YouTube membership program. Thank you so much for your support. It really does mean the world to me because you're helping me to further grow my mission to help narcissistic abuse survivors discover, understand, and overcome narcissistic abuse in toxic relationships. You'll see their names scrolling right there. And to everyone who likes my videos, subscribes to my channel, shares my videos, and comments on my videos, thank you so much. Every action you take toward one of my videos helps me to spread my message just a little bit further and help more people. I genuinely appreciate you. Thank you so much. Now, before I go, make sure you take a look at the videos I'm leaving for you right there and right there. And while you're here, hit that subscribe button so we can stay connected and continue on this healing journey together. I'll see you soon.